What's going on, guys? It's Kin. Today I'm going to be making a video about streaming platforms and their loudness. So I did already touch on this subject in a recent video, and the topic was, should you master your songs to -14 LUFS? Because, there's the whole talk online about whether streaming platforms lower your song to -14 or if they don't. Now, I did the test and I've seen plenty of songs, if not all music, going past that -14 threshold to -9, -6, -5, and so on. And the other thing too was you would never want to purposely master your song to -14 and hold yourself back, because some songs are just going to sound better at a louder level. I'm making this video because a good friend of mine, shout out to King of the 8 God, he tweeted on X today. I know that sounds kind of weird to say, tweeting on X, but he said SoundCloud is literally 3 times louder than Spotify. And he kind of has a point, because, off the top of my head, I don't really listen to SoundCloud that much anymore, but I'm pretty sure SoundCloud doesn't really lower the volume of music. Now, when it comes to YouTube, I know I'm like 95% sure YouTube, not YouTube Music, YouTube, regular YouTube, the audio coming from videos is lower than Apple Music, Spotify, those two for sure. And I've done tests with Apple Music and Spotify. They're not lowering the files. They have the audio normalization option, but if you don't have that turned on, they're not lowering the files. So when it comes to SoundCloud, I don't know if SoundCloud has a button for that or an option for that. I know SoundCloud has a high quality listening option if you pay for SoundCloud. Now, I don't pay for SoundCloud, so when I do this test, I'm not going to have that enabled. And, if the results are that SoundCloud doesn't lower the volume with that turned off, with the regular listening experience, then the high quality probably just means that, it probably has something to do with the codec, not necessarily that the file's louder. And this post got a lot of replies. People are saying SoundCloud does it, SoundCloud keeps it at -1 true peak. We're going to do the test. We're going to find out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to capture the output signal from Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, and YouTube, not YouTube Music, regular YouTube. I'm going to capture the output into my DAW, the same song. We're going to be doing Pierre Bourne, Bon Appetit. It's a song that I've been listening to a lot off of his new album, so I figure we'll do that. And we're going to compare using the waveform statistics. We're going to see the loudness, and we're also going to see what each platform is doing to the file, because I've seen tests online before, and from my memory, Spotify actually is doing the most to the signal, and it actually looked the worst. That's my memory from tests that I've seen online. So, also this whole thing of Spotify sounding louder, if they're both not bringing the signal down at all, let's say, it's definitely possible that SoundCloud sounds louder, because Spotify is taking a lot of the top end off, and that top end will help make something perceived louder. So we're going to be doing the test. I'm going to stop rambling. Let's go into the DAW and check out the results. All right, guys, we're in RX. I loaded up the 4 prints into RX Audio Editor. And just the FYI, when I captured these from each streaming platform, I did it in 96K, 32-bit float. I time aligned all of the prints so they are the same length. And I just bounced them as a WAV file. Same thing, 96K, 32-bit. So no dithering needed. But yeah, we got Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, YouTube. So right now it's actually showing SoundCloud. So as you can see, SoundCloud is chopping off a bit under 20K. It looks like, so I want to grab this. It looks like it's grabbing about 16K. About 16K it's chopping off, which is a lot. That is a lot. I have a theory why they do that, though. If we go to Spotify, they're cutting off even more technically. You can see that it went down a little bit. Watch as I go to SoundCloud. It'll go up a tiny bit. Spotify, they're chopping off a tiny bit more. So around that 16K-ish, you know. And that is significant because, you know, anything under 20K is what humans can hear. So that is a pretty big deal. Now, they probably do it because since so many people listen to music on Spotify and SoundCloud, them cutting those frequencies on everything probably eases the load on the servers when it comes to the bandwidth. That's my guess. I could be wrong about that. But, you know, that is a pretty big deal that they're doing that. Now, when it comes to Spotify Premium, I don't know if there's an option to, you know, I don't know if, like, one of the higher quality options doesn't cut that information. Same thing with SoundCloud. I'm not sure, but these are both the free versions. You know, Spotify Web Player is what I used, and then SoundCloud Online. All right. So, once again, Spotify, SoundCloud, there's a little bit more information. Apple Music, it goes all the way up to 20K. You can see there's a bit of information. You know, once you get to, like, I don't know why the tool isn't showing. Once you get to, like, you know, 16K, there's not as much information, but there definitely is a lot more information above 16K going up to 20K. After 20K, it does cut off. But if we go to YouTube, even YouTube has that information above 15, 16K, which is interesting. Now, you will see, though, YouTube is lower in volume. It's by a good amount, too. So if we go back to Spotify, let's take a look at the waveform statistics. Now, there is a bit of a problem because it looks like there was a click when I printed this. So you're going to see that the signal clipped at 0.62 decibels, 0.79. But the integrated loudness was negative 9.4 LUFS. Max short term, negative 7.1. Max momentary, negative 4.7. With a 10.6 loudness range, which is pretty good. That's this is a pretty good mix. Once again, this is Bon Appetit by Pierre Bourne on his new album. Those numbers look pretty good, actually. If we go to SoundCloud, SoundCloud is negative 9.3 integrated, 10.4 loudness range, and SoundCloud True Peak is negative 0.1 True Peak. So they're not bringing it down to negative 1 decibels automatically. There was a reply to the X post that I saw mentioning that. So yeah, once again, the loudness range or integrated loudness for SoundCloud, negative 9.3. Integrated loudness, Spotify, negative 9.4. Pretty much the same thing. It could be because of that click. Or actually, it was a little lower, but pretty much the same thing. Let's go to Apple Music. Let's see what it says for Apple. Negative 9.3 integrated once again. The max short term and momentary look the same. And Apple Music is True Peak negative 0.1. Same as SoundCloud. All right. So it definitely looks like SoundCloud, Apple Music, and Spotify loudness-wise are pretty much the same. Even dynamic range coming in the same. Integrated loudness the same. Max short term, negative 7.1 for Apple Music. Max short term for SoundCloud, I'm sorry, negative 7.1. And for Spotify, I'm going to assume the same thing. All right. Even the max momentary is about the same. If we go to YouTube, though, YouTube is lower. So you can see the integrated loudness is exactly -14 LUFS with a max short term of -11, max momentary of -9.3 LUFS, true peak -4.48 decibels. So technically, YouTube lowered the audio file -4.48 decibels to get that integrated loudness of -14, which makes sense because if you raise, if you were to raise that, -14 plus about 4.5 will get you to around that -9-ish LUFS. The interesting thing here, though, is that the loudness range is the same as the other platforms, 10.5. Even after YouTube brought the file down to -14 LUFS, the dynamics stayed the same. So this kind of has to do with what I was talking about, where if you master a song, let's say to -9, right? And you bring that master down to -14, the dynamics aren't going to really change from what it was when it was at -9. But that mix, let's say that mix before it got mastered was -14. The dynamics are most likely going to be different, if not have more dynamics before bringing the level up, to -9, because obviously there's probably clipping and limiting involved. So that's something really important to remember. Like if these platforms were to bring the level down like YouTube is doing, you're not gaining dynamics by doing that. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but there will be a difference. So that's something to remember. Pretty much the main takeaway is just Spotify really is chopping off the most out of any of these other platforms. SoundCloud is doing a good amount too, a little bit less than Spotify, but Apple Music and even YouTube. I mean, Apple Music and YouTube look damn near identical. I'm gonna wrap this up here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, make sure to like, subscribe. Let me know if you guys have any questions too, because some of this stuff can be confusing. That's pretty much it. I'll see you guys later. Peace out.